Coming up in today's newscast, the latest ceasefire between Israel and Gaza seems to be holding. United States President Trump asks Israel to slow down on settlement expansion, and the city of Eilat welcomes a very special visitor. Unconfirmed reports from Arab media sources today have been saying that Israeli jets have just struck military targets in Syria just outside of Damascus. Witnesses say they heard explosions coming from a warehouse nearby, a well-known Hezbollah stronghold. The IDF, as policy, does not comment on alleged military strikes like these. If true, these airstrikes would have very interesting timing. Mere days ago, Russian leaders publicly announced that only Syrian forces should have a presence in the country's southern region, where Israel believes thousands of Iranian forces have currently entrenched. This change in policy is seen as a big win for Israeli leaders. Prime Minister Netanyahu has repeatedly pushed Putin to keep Iran off Israel's doorstep by extending the buffer zone. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman is also in Moscow this very moment, lobbying for the same. Russia is most likely hoping to defuse a very volatile situation on the Israel-Syria border. Earlier this month, Iran fired dozens of missiles at Israeli military sites in the Golan, the largest ever Iranian attack from the region. The Israeli counterstrike that followed delivered a pummeling blow to Iranian forces in the region as well, though. But with the fate of the JCPOA nuclear deal with Iran now in limbo, this is a problem that may be quite long-term. Following the most intense exchange of fire between Israel and Palestinian terror cells in Gaza since the 2014 war, things have returned to a relative calm. Both Israel and Hamas have upheld the ceasefire deal reached yesterday, but only after Palestinian terrorists launched at least 100 missiles from the Gaza Strip into Israeli territory. The barrages were mostly deflected by Israel's Iron Dome defense system, but a few direct hits in Israeli communities resulted in some moderate injuries and some very close calls. In response, Israeli Defense Forces launched a pummeling series of airstrikes across dozens of Hamas targets throughout the Strip. Army officials say they delivered one of the worst blows to Hamas in many years. Prime Minister Netanyahu has promised a swift and brutal retaliation if the ceasefire deal is broken as well.
מי שאחראים להסלמה בהשראת איראן הם שלטון החמאס, הג'יהאד האסלאמי וארגוני הטרור האחרים. אינני מפרט את תוכניותינו, משום שאינני רוצה שהאויב ידע מה צפוי לו. אבל דבר אחד ברור לו, כשהם מנסים אותנו, הם משלמים מיד. ואם ימשיכו לנסות אותנו, הם ישלמו עוד הרבה יותר.
Meanwhile, though most of the world's leaders stood by Israel during these attacks, the United Nations Security Council failed to pass a resolution condemning Hamas for the violence. Kuwait stepped in last minute to block the vote, but leaders from France, Germany, and the United States, including President Donald Trump himself, publicly sided with Israel over the events of the last 48 hours. Israel has often accused the international community of bias when it comes to conflicts like these, but this time it may be worth noting that the tides seem to have changed, and now the world is finally pointing its fingers directly at Hamas. Following a leaked internal letter, the Israeli chief rabbinate has now officially confirmed its newly proposed criteria for the recognition of rabbinical courts abroad, especially, if not specifically, for the purposes of overseeing Jewish conversions and divorces. The draft, if passed, would require rabbinical courts in the diaspora to undergo examinations, a move that critics say is just the Israeli rabbinate trying to monopolize the practice. Here with more on this complex issue is Rabbi Meir Azari of Beit Daniel, Tel Aviv, modern Orthodox Rabbi Seth Farber, who is a historian and the founder of ETIN, the Jewish Life Information Center of Israel, Rabbi Ariel Constantine, the founding rabbi at the Tel Aviv International Synagogue, and Rabbi Ronen Neuwirth, the chairman of the Ve'ahavta Tel Aviv Jewish Experience. Thank you all very much for coming in.
Thank you.
So first, I'm going to start off, let's answer the critics. One of the mandates proposed says that to be recognized, the rabbinical court must be Orthodox, permanent, meaning that it convenes regularly and not just for specific events, and is officially recognized by the countries that they're in. What's not fair about that so far?
It's ridiculous. In the modern era, that most of the Jews outside of Israel are not Orthodox, Reform or conservative or secular Jews, trying to get this monopoly from here it's ridiculous. Just look outside, see Tel Aviv, preparing yourself to the great parade. See the spirit of Tel Aviv, the spirit of Israel. This is what we want to say to the world. Israel is becoming Orthodox Israel is becoming ultra-Orthodox, because this is the face of the chief rabbinate. My Orthodox colleagues can tell you that. This is not Orthodox monopoly, it's ultra-Orthodox monopoly. And saying that to the rest of the world, this is a disaster, this is shame, and it's a mistake of the Israeli politicians. The fact that they want to have it, I can understand. But politicians, to sell the story of the future of the Jewish people, for what and why? Don't do that.
I think that there's definitely a major disconnect that's being caused by this, even within the Orthodox movement, as my colleague said as well,
Sure.
that throughout history, we've always had academies and Torah institutions and yeshivot that have been giving maximal study and testing and raising generations of rabbis. And that has always been a community-based thing, where we have a rabbi who is a community pulpit, a leader who takes care of his congregation, who provides leadership in terms of birth, in terms of bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah and weddings and funerals, and conversion as part of his functioning as a community rabbi. And to say that they have to meet regularly and be tested by the Rabbanut is a travesty and an insult to the Orthodox institutions around the world as well. To be able to tell them that you're not qualified, you're not worthy, the community rabbi is being handcuffed in his functioning to serve his community, and it is creating a greater disconnect and divide between the rabbinate and the face of the Israel to the diaspora.
So what do you think, Rabbi Neuwirth, what do you think the results of such a policy, should it be approved, will be?
So I think there are three different issues, and we need to separate between them in order to get the honest picture. To begin with, the state of Israel, whether we agree or disagree, but that's by democracy, gave the power to the Rabbanut to make decisions like the official, the professional body, and like in every area.
Not in every area. Conversion is
not
okay if it's done by the Reform movement as well. Is accepted by the state of Israel.
And
this proposal is changing that.
the law free term, but I'm speaking about whether to accept a conversion halachically. This is something that state of Israel empowered the Rabbanut. Do I agree with this? I think we can find better solutions. We definitely need to see a Jewry outside of Israel, and today there's a huge disconnect, as my colleagues mentioned before. But this, the policy per se is something which is legitimate. The problem here is when you define some rabbis who are not trustworthy, and because you spoke about conversions and divorces, and this is halacha. Now we can argue where do we draw the lines of halacha. However, there's something else which is testifying on someone who is Jewish, and today the Rabbanut is not accepting a testimony of rabbis, even Orthodox rabbis, that someone is Jewish. And this is something that it's not halachic. It's just saying that this person, because I don't believe, I do not identify with his line, with his philosophy, is not trustworthy. And this is something which is shaming many rabbis, and obviously creating just making the disconnect between Israel and the diaspora much more severe.
This isn't only about rabbis. This is about Israel fulfilling its historical destiny. Right now, the rabbinate, through the documents that have been publicized, is demonstrating both its arrogance and its ignorance of the world Jewish community. The rabbinate and the state of Israel can choose to live myopically. They can choose to be monolithic. That's their right. But that is not the kind of state of Israel that the Jewish diaspora, and in fact the Jews of Israel, want. Itim has been fighting for more than 4 years just to get this document. We've been to court. We've filed Freedom of Information Act. We've gone to meetings with the rabbinate. We finally have a document, and frankly, it's pathetic. It demonstrates an incredible lack of sensitivity and really threatens the very future of the Jewish world by delegitimizing, by disenfranchising, by alienating, by really saying you're not valuable at all to us. And it can be so different, and it's so easy for it to be different, not just for rabbis, but for the Jewish world.
To show you the embarrassment that this law can cause, is the fact that not just a few months ago, they still had a debate if to recognize conversion done by Rabbi Luxton from New York. The rabbi that did the conversion of Ivanka Trump. You understand that?
Well, so
I'll even say more than that. I'll even say more. According to
Yeah.
these new criteria, and I'll make it very clear, Rabbi Lookstein's conversions will not be accepted. I
Which
need to
means
make it
Ivanka
very
Trump
clear. I don't want to
yesterday
speak
was
about an
Jewish,
individual. I don't want to
and
speak an
tomorrow-
individual
okay.
person.
And
But what I do
tomorrow-
want to say is that individual rabbis of the stature of Rabbi Lookstein and hundreds like him will find themselves completely alienated from the very state of Israel that they support. But it's not only about the rabbis, it's about Jewish peoplehood.
Well, so and something that's kind of been brought up is there have been kind of comparisons made to the Roman Catholic Church and their history, and studying their history of how they divided and kind of lost their, you could say, monopoly over the spiritual power and forces of Christianity. Do you see the Israeli Rabbanut? Do you see comparisons there between the Israeli Rabbanut and the Roman Catholic Church of old?
No one's elected the chief rabbi's pope. Jewish people don't want a papacy. The Jewish people want a state of Israel that reflects their values,
Sure.
that supports them, that encourages them, and that empowers them, not one that alienates
Can you
them.
imagine to yourself that Rabbi Gur or the rabbi from Vizhnitz or the Shas will vote for Rabbi Lau and he is the pope for them? This is ridiculous. That
Well, but not just that, but I mean in general in terms of, making edicts for and kind of separating people. Yeah? Do you ever?
The monopoly of a rabbinate within a handful of people is very, very dangerous and very frightening. As my colleagues have also
and
said,
not
it does not
Jewish.
represent the full spectrum of the Jewish experience, and therefore marginalizes all others. What's sad about it is even the ultra-Orthodox don't really look at the chief rabbinate as their rabbinic body, even though they're the ones who are controlling it, and it was established to be a religious Zionist rabbinate to represent all people, from left to right, from secular to ultra-Orthodox, and that's how it was established to begin with, to be a unifying body rather than a dividing body, and it's become a dividing force.
Final word?
Yeah. There's just one thing which I think we are missing out. We are blaming the Rabbanut, but the body that empowers the Rabbanut is the government. And throughout the history of the state of Israel, most of the governments were secular and they empowered the Rabbanut. So if we want to make a change, it has to start from above.
We began
politics.
this battle not for the rabbinate. We began this battle for the future of the state of Israel.
That's right.
And particularly for the future of the Jewish people.
Well, rabbis, unfortunately, I'm so sorry. Unfortunately, we've hit time, but thank you all very much for coming in, and that's a good point of thought to leave on. So thank you all very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now yesterday, the Israeli government advanced construction plans for nearly 2,000 new Jewish homes throughout the West Bank. Nearly half of these homes would be built outside of current settlement blocks in areas that some argue is Palestinian-owned territory. This decision is sure to ignite international debate, but the White House has already stepped in and apparently asked Israel to tap the brakes.
According to the official statement, President Trump has expressed his concerns to the Israeli government regarding how settlement growth impacts peace with the Palestinians. The Trump administration is expected to present its peace plan next month after the Muslim holiday Ramadan concludes. Reading between the lines here, many believe Trump has asked Netanyahu to scale down settlement growth in order to give his American peace effort a chance. The growth of Jewish settlements in land that Palestinians hope to make a future Palestinian state remains one of the biggest obstacles in the peace process. Religious and right-wing Israelis say this land historically and biblically belongs to the Jews, but international law and, in some cases, Israeli law often does not recognize these settlements as legal. Just yesterday, Israel's own high court walked back a prior ruling on this matter, effectively unwinding the state's position on the seizure of Palestinian land for settler use.
The dangers of smoking are quite well known by now, but despite these dangers, more and more Israelis every year continue to smoke. And while it's certainly anyone's choice to do so, the Israeli government has finally decreed a new set of smoking restrictions in public areas in order to protect public health. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here with the details. Brett, where exactly are these new restrictions being placed?
Well, this is a very huge reform. So virtually every public gathering of more than 50 people will officially, by law, be a non-smoking zone.
Wow.
And as you can imagine, that's a pretty huge list of areas. I mean, we're talking about, hospitals, sports venues, concerts, amusement parks, zoos, even parking lots. Now, people who want to smoke will have to be at least 10 meters away from the entrance before they can light up.
Wow, that is, that's certainly huge.
Yeah.
I mean, until now, the restrictions on designated smoking and non-smoking areas in Israel have been pretty lax, to say the least. And at least considered to countries like the United States and the EU, where legislation has banned smoking in places like restaurants and bars already.
Sure. I mean, this is very much kind of along those lines that you see in the U.S. I mean, I will say that unlike most American cities, smoking in restaurants isn't altogether banned under this new law, but that's something that the Knesset does want to expand upon in the future. Interestingly, although government offices do fall under this law, the Knesset actually included an exemption for their own offices on the grounds that it constitutes a workplace and not a government office. Having said that, most of the smoking areas in the Knesset are probably going to be closed except for probably one, and I think at the end of the day, this is all going to be a matter of personal enforcement anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that this law is a long time coming, and as you said, despite everything we already know about the dangers of smoking, smoking has steadily risen in Israel over the years. And part of that has to do with the country's military structure.
Absolutely.
40% of Israel's smokers pick up the habit by the time they finish the army, and around the age of 20 or 21, which is fairly young.
Yeah, I mean, that's also significantly higher in Israel than compared to other armies anywhere else in the world. And look, I mean, I think people certainly have the right to smoke as long as they note the dangers and have their eyes open about it. That's for sure their call. But every day, we are learning more and more about the dangers of smoking and secondhand smoke and even thirdhand smoke as well. I mean, just a few days ago, I saw a new study that suggests that smoke from someone else's cigarette just touching your skin is enough to expose the body to half of that cigarette's dangerous chemicals. 8,000 Israelis die every year from diseases related to smoking, including 700 from secondhand smoke alone who don't even touch cigarettes. And that is obviously just awful. Those are all statistics. And like you said, a lot of people here feel that this smoking ban is a long time coming for that reason.
All right, well, there's a certain poetry to this timing as well, because today happens to be the World No Tobacco Day, according to the World Health Organization. Diseases from tobacco cause nearly 3 million deaths every year. The CDC calls smoking the single leading cause of preventable death.
Exactly. I mean, it's believed that one person dies from smoking just about every 6 seconds.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I wonder actually what they'll do about how vaporizers and all that will factor into this, but we'll have to keep a close eye on it. Brett, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
All right, now on a related, albeit equally morbid topic, the Health Ministry has just published its findings on the central causes of death in Israel. But before the bad news, let's give the good. Studies conducted over the last few years also show that while disease is still the major killer, life expectancy for Israelis overall is on the rise. The data shows mortality rates from heart disease, cancer, and of course accidents have all been steadily decreasing over the last decade. But they still remain the most significant causes of death in the country. In 2015, cancer alone accounted for a quarter of all deaths in both men and women, and the number 2 killer was heart disease, which claimed 15% of mortalities that year. But after that, the statistics vary a bit when it comes to men and women. For men, diabetes is the next most likely killer, and for women, cerebrovascular diseases are more probable. But when you do a breakdown based on age, a startling pattern also begins to emerge. For boys aged 15 to 24, the leading cause of death was actually accidental death, and suicide was the second most common causes for both sexes between the ages of 15 and 44. These figures, troubling as they are, do follow a similar pattern that you'll find all over the world when it comes to disease. Still, the overall decline in mortality rates is the silver lining and a testament to Israeli medical teams combating some of the world's most lethal diseases. Israel's southern resort city of Eilat just received an extraordinary visitor. I'm talking bigger than Kim and Kanye, bigger than any president, even bigger than Beyonce. This one visitor is actually one of the largest mammals on Earth, a rare, beautiful, endangered blue whale.
What you're seeing now is the first ever evidence gathered of a blue whale in Red Sea waters. Typically, these majestic creatures never stray so far from deep waters because their diets demand more food than these areas can provide. That's why this visit was a short one. This 20-meter-long whale came within just a few football fields worth of Eilat's shore. When sailors and marine experts first spotted it in the sea, they figured it was a smaller, more commonly known whale shark. There's never been any record of an endangered blue whale, of which there are only about 12,000 on Earth, in these waters. Marine scientists are gushing over this incredible sighting while documenting its journey through the Gulf of Eilat. They made sure to keep their distance and allowed the aquatic giant to swim uninterrupted. On the scale of whales, this was actually a smaller specimen, believe it or not. blue whales can grow up to 33 meters long with huge fat masses under their bellies. Even though this whale is a bit on the skinnier side, though, experts say he still looked completely healthy. Either way, his visit was more than welcomed.
All right, now if you're a bookworm, you may already know about book surfing, but if not, then you're in for a treat. The idea started out as one Israeli's way to reconnect with his friends through his love of books, and the concept combines a traditional book club with the social aspect of something like couch surfing, hence the name. Well, that idea has exploded over the years into a worldwide phenomenon, paving the way for the first ever book surfing day on June 2nd.
The concept of book surfing is relatively simple. Think of it as a poetry slam for any kind of written document. Anything from books to legal documents to grocery lists are fair play. These little meetups bring together participants for a night of sharing their love of the written word by reading aloud a short text. Everyone in the room has to read something, and it has to be less than a page and a half, and every meeting has to include one new member as well as people who don't already know each other. Raz Spector came up with the first book surf way back in 2013 after returning from a few years abroad and wanting a new way to reconnect with his friends. Well, a few years later, the local idea has flourished into a worldwide literary movement. At least 2,200 book surfs have taken place all over the world, in countries as far as Albania, Mexico, the US, Argentina, and Australia. And this Saturday, the first ever World Book Surfing Day, we'll see over 20 cities in at least 12 different countries all join in on the fun. But remember, the first rule of book surf, do talk about book surf. And if you and your friends love to read, check out the group's Facebook and host your very own local book surf yourself.
And now ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh has the top 5 of the week.
This week marks the start of the very first cocktail week here in Tel Aviv, and I couldn't think of a better way to help you guys navigate through the week than to give you the top 5 best cocktail bars to check out in the city. So let's get started. First on our list is the Imperial Craft Cocktail Bar, known to be dedicated to the lost art of the cocktail. Last year, the Imperial Bar was awarded the Best Bar in the Middle East and Africa Awards, so come in and choose from over 150 custom-tailored cocktails, and trust me, you won't be disappointed. Next up is one of my personal favorites, Spice House. This cocktail bar is designed like a medicine lab from the early 20th century, where guests drink from lab flasks. In accordance to the concept, waiters and bartenders wear doctor's robes, and the interior is decorated in a unique pharmacy theme. Located on one of the busiest streets in Tel Aviv, you can't miss this bar on your next trip to Israel. Third on our list is the absolutely unique Bellboy Bar. Anything and everything you can think out drinking out of is offered at this bar, whether it be a seashell, a mini bathtub, you name it, they probably have a drink poured into it. Bellboy's atmosphere can be characterized by its 1920s Prohibition style, carefully chosen designs, and extremely well-dressed bartenders. This is a bar you'll never forget coming to, no matter how much you drink. Cocktail Bar 223 is fourth on our list. The drinks served at this bar are made by award-winning bartenders who know how to create both a complex yet creative drink. The 20s jazz music really helps set the mood, and the location is absolutely unbeatable. But hey, don't take my word for it. Come for a visit to the Holy Land and check it out yourself. Last but definitely not least is the Double Standard Cocktail Bar here in Tel Aviv. Have you ever taken a sip of a Bloody Mary but in an actual blood bag? Yeah, I didn't think so. How about a drink straight from a shark's mouth? Yep, didn't think so either. Unique and creative drinks is an absolute understatement when it comes to Double Standard. They have to be one of the most daring and out-of-this-world cocktail bars I've ever been to. And trust me, the drinks taste just as good as they look. That's all for today's Top 5. Back to you.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Israel was just honored with a rare visit from a gorgeous blue whale, so today's word is Livyatan, which means whale in Hebrew. Specifically, our latest visitor, as I said earlier, is a Livyatan Kachol, or a blue whale, but there are many different types of Livyatanim, or whales, to be found. Now, you may also have noticed a glaring similarity between the word Livyatan, or whale, and Leviathan, aka the giant scary mythical aquatic monster. And while many accounts differ regarding what the Leviathan is and where the myth around it originates, the Hebrew Tanakh does mention a Livyatan no less than 6 times, and the descriptions basically cover everything from a monster dragon to giant underwater beasts, which explains Leviathan's modern definition. Now that being said, as far as the monster Leviathan is concerned, you can relax, because according to Jewish legend, God killed all but one male Leviathan so that they would never be able to take over the earth. And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy and warm with a low of 69 or 21 degrees Celsius. Over the weekend, the temperatures are set to be about the same with a high of around 80 or 27 degrees Celsius, but there is a high chance of rain across the center and north. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.57 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News or on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras, and thank you for watching.